Now this is one of the little parts that for the track bike. What it is, there's a little compartment on the side of the fairing that normally on a street bike you would keep your change or your gloves or something in there. But I wanted to, there's a little plastic cover, it's a vinyl or whatever, it snaps on. I wanted to make a carbon fiber part for this. So what I did, I took a piece of plywood, thin plywood, put on some normal carbon fiber that I had a scrap, but now I want to put a skin of really pretty carbon fiber. Remember, all carbon fiber can come two different ways. It can be very pretty, it can be structural. Structural carbon, the emphasis is on making it strong. You would use a different resin. This, by the way, just for people that don't know, West 105, 206 hardener. You can tell we've made a lot of parts with these. If you go back into the YouTube videos, making the RD seat was one of them. But anyway, one of the things that I want to do, it's a 5-to-1 mix. You can use the pumps, you can use a scale, you can do it with 5 little cups. In this case, I've mixed enough of it, I can just do it by eye. Not real critical, by the way. I think if it's 4-to-1 or 6-to-1, for our purposes, this is just cosmetic anyway. Now, as the hardener gets old, what happens to the hardener? It turns this black cherry color, which I don't find, to be a problem, because most of it, we're going to put our urethane clear on top of it anyway. So what's always a good idea with any epoxy is stir it up real well. Now, I've made not only mufflers and things that you need structural resin like Huntsman 863, but also high temperature resins. Huntsman is a high temperature resin. Epon is a structural resin. West is kind of they make boats out of West resin, by the way. And West it's an acronym for something that they use in boating, but it doesn't really matter for our purposes. Once that's stirred up good, now if we are making a cosmetic part, an example of something you could do is a front fender on a bike. If you want to have a carbon fiber looking fender, well, there's a lot of ways to make it, but this is what's called carbon skinning. It's where you don't depend on the carbon to do any structure. If you look at the dashboard of cars, there's an awful lot of parts on different bikes that this is the way it is. They have a part, usually it's plastic or aluminum or something, and they want to have a carbon fiber skin, or what I call the carbon fiber parts that you peel off the back and stick them on. Well, that's all in the eye of the beholder anyway. So, but this material, if you have this material in your little workshop, it's relatively inexpensive. It is useful in a lot of ways. Now, as I'm painting it on, I wanted to show this. Since we've got this time of year, we're basically working in the shop every 7 days a week. And you can see the original carbon fiber that I put on there, that was to make it stronger, because I didn't think the plywood would be strong enough, even though this is just a hatch. Go around the edge here, even though we're going to sand this off when it's done. I want to get a nice smooth coat of resin on. Now, if you're skinning a part, you want the part to be as flat as possible. The reason is, if there's a lump in it, when you put on the carbon fiber and you block sand it, it's going to come through as a whole. Now, if you get a little imperfection in carbon fiber, a lot of times you can take a Sharpie pen and then just put clear over it. Well, we'd like not to have to do that, or do it as little as possible. And we do have a couple of pieces of scrap. This is just scrap from other jobs that we've been working on. And by the way, if you go to buy any carbon fiber, it's best to just look on eBay. People are selling different grades of carbon fiber all over the place. You can buy small amounts. Years ago, you couldn't do that as easily. Nowadays, it's pretty easy to do that. Now, I always try to put 2 parts on a cosmetic part. The reason is, if I have to sand through, carbon fiber has little pinholes in between the weave. And sometimes if you try to do it with one coat, and you look at it from certain light angles, you can see those little spots coming through. Especially, well, if it's a cosmetic part, you want it to be pretty anyway. It's like lipstick on a pig. Lipstick on a Kawasaki. I can picture a lot of nasty comments going on out there. Anyway, hey, and I hope, just to say, since I've been putting these on YouTube, Years ago I used to do this. In fact, I did it for a lot of years with other subject matter. But what I'm doing here is I'm trying to make sure the weave is nice and straight. Even though this isn't the part we're going to see, it's each unseen and hidden part, because the gods see everywhere. Okay, we get rid of that string. This is the one you're going to see, so I'd like the weave to be nice and straight. Now see, there are little pinholes that if I didn't put that second layer on, you may or may not see them. In my case, I'd see them because I'm working under mostly fluorescent lights here. Fluorescent lights show the mistakes in everything. By the way, here's a tip. When you mix resin, this is not even funny, this is a safety tip. Don't mix any more than you need, and if you need a lot, consider mixing it a little at a time. Now even West resin, which is the safest of the resins, it's the least toxic and very easy to use. I think you'd see that in the real time here, that it's pretty easy to do this. I can't imagine anybody that could watch even this video and not be able to make the part, or skin one of his parts. Now we'll put a clear urethane finish on this, but we do want to get everything saturated as really deep as we can. And I want to leave enough resin on top that I can block sand this out. Now, as always happens with this, and we really can't show this because what's going to happen, it's going to be 15 minutes or so. I don't want to bore anybody to death. People get bored enough watching me. This is the part I did want to show. When you see the little fish eyes, the little pieces, the little bubbles, little dots, whatever you want to call them. Well, what will happen as this part starts to cure, and you can see it has a nice little orange glow to it from the color of the resin, which some people find attractive, some don't. Again, that's that eye of the beholder thing. But if you insist on having it clear, just buy a new can of hardener that isn't 2 or 3 years old. And if you buy hardener in a store, pull a lid off and look at it, and if it's that color, it's old hardener. That's a good way to tell, as we found out over the years. Now, this is the part that takes a little, I call it babysitting. While this is here, if I keep going back and forth, what will happen, I can get rid of some of the fish eyes, and I can take an ordinary Bondo trowel, I can take a business card, anything. Now I want to look, because if I have any imperfection in this piece of carbon, I could just add another piece. It looks like I got a little bit of an area down there where the weave is not perfect. Get that off of there. Now once I got it laid down and I've got as much of that squeezed out as I can, get an old business card. An old business card will even get some more of it out of there. And you don't want to press down too hard, because what happens, you disturb the weave and then you have little imperfections in the weave. And nothing looks faker in the world than carbon fiber that doesn't have a little imperfection in it, because then you know it's not real carbon fiber. They did it with Photoshop or something. Real carbon fiber does have a little bit of a, it's not exactly even, unless you make an aircraft part autoclaved or some extremely high-end part. I just want to, that's about what I would be looking for before I put this apart to dry. Now if it were the summer, I would take this outside, put it in the direct sunlight and just let it cook. Right now I don't need this part for the next couple of days. So I'm just going to let it sit over by a heating vent. There's no smell to West resin. It's not toxic. It's not horrible stuff. EPON, if we were making this, you'd need fans going and everything else. But that has, and that's, when that's all sanded down, that honey color will be muted just a little bit. I could try to really get that nice. And as you get the last little bit off, you can do it on a 45-degree angle and then go the other way. And so there's no reason, if you have a little part, a good part that makes a good part to skin. If you don't want to pay a lot of money for a hugger, you buy an old hugger that's all chewed up or been in a crash, repair it, and put a light carbon fiber on it, and you have a carbon fiber hugger for probably no money. Sometimes you can get them for free if they're crashed and broken. Okay, now the next step on this will be, for sure, the next step on this is going to be, it's got to dry. Once it dries, we'll sand it with some light sandpaper, get a couple of coats, trim all the extra around on a sandpaper. And you can trim this, you don't even need to cut it. You can just take a piece of rough medium sandpaper. Now the edge will be a darker color, so you can run a Sharpie marker along the edge if the wood does start to show through, and that edge, that'll kind of conceal the edge. Anyway, that's a nice little part, something anybody can make. And I know a lot of people that may not have seen how that's done in the real world.